Mommy, she made me go. You can't hold me against my will. And then what happened? Niagara Falls erupted. The tears started flowing. Well, we arrived at camp, and Benji was a mess, and I was a mess. Between the two of us, there wasn't much left. Well, he wouldn't eat dinner. He was holding in his emotions. He didn't want to say a word to the kids of how he felt. And one of the kids, they had a turkey dinner, and part of the turkey dinner, there were peas, and a boy dropped his pea on the table, and someone flicked it, and it hit Benji straight in the shirt, and it stained his shirt. Well, that was enough. He came running out, and there was a big rock, and he sat on top of the big rock, and he started crying and crying and crying. And I was at my wit's end. I had everybody go up there and try to console him. I had the nurses. I had the arts and crafts director. I had the camp mom. I even had my wife, Linda. And if someone can't respond to Linda, they'll respond to nobody. Well, so I said to myself, please, please, I don't want to lose a child to homesickness. It would be such a horrible thing to send him home feeling that way. Well, I didn't know what to do, so I called his mother for help. I said, tell me something. I need some insight. And she said to me, he lives for basketball. Basketball. I'm thinking, basketball? Well, a plan came into my mind. All right, so I said bribery. That always works with kids, even though I'm supposed to be an educator, but I resort to bribery all the time. So I said, Benji, I know you're crying a lot, but if you could stop, I'm going to arrange to get you private basketball lessons. And Benji said, oh, I don't care. I still want to go home. Well, just at that moment, Coach Jay passed by, and I yelled for him, Coach, please come here. And it was a pure coincidence. But sometimes in the worst of moments, good things can happen. Well, Coach, I said, could you please teach him how to play basketball? Well, what does he want to learn? Does he want to learn pick and rolls? Does he want to learn dribbling? Who is this person? And then I showed him, you see the boy crying, the 7-year-old on top of the rock? That's the person I want you to work with. So Coach says to him, Benji, I have a magic ball here. If you touch the magic ball, it's going to force your tears to stop. So you have a choice. So he touched the magic ball, and off they went. Well, you have to know a little bit more about Coach Jay. He was a living legend. His team had just won the high school Indiana championship. And believe me, that's no small feat. That you're like a legend there. And that summer, he was working with the Detroit Pistons, and the coach was Doug Collins. And so he was working with the best of the best. And he had 2 sons, and one of them was named Ladd. And I met Ladd when I went to Indiana. And Ladd was like 6'5", great looking. I lectured at his education class, and I went to the student union after, and Ladd said to me, you know, I have a summer free, and I love kids, and I'm going to go to graduate school. How about maybe, can I come work with you? I've never been up to the Northeast before. Well, Ladd arrived, and sure enough, I knew I could have predicted it. Kids loved him. He was like the nicest guy in the world. Well, one day I saw Ladd, and instead of that smile, because he had kids like always on his shoulders, carrying them around. Well, I saw Ladd's face was drawn, and he just didn't have his usual smile. I said, Ladd, what's wrong? Come on, you could speak to me. He says, I miss my father. So I said, invite him to come. Just have him. So he said, he called, and he says his father's going to come for a weekend, that he got off working with the Detroit Pistons, and he was going to show up in camp. So I wanted to make it special, and I drew up an itinerary because I know he hadn't been around our area. Well, when Coach Jay arrived, he knocked on my door instead of traveling. Would you mind if I stayed on campus? And maybe there's some kids who might want to work with me. I said, work with you? He drooled with the idea of working with an NBA high school championship coach. Well, they did, but that winter a real surprise came. I got a letter from Coach Jay saying, I think this summer, if you want me, I'm going to arrange my schedule. And if there's any kids, any age, any ability who love basketball, if I could help, I'm going to come. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. So now, you know a little bit about Coach Jay and you know a little bit about Benji. So Benji was crying on that rock. Coach Jay walked by, and all of a sudden I said, Coach Jay, I need a favor. And Coach Jay said, okay, Benji, I'll do it, but I can't have you crying. If you touch this magic basketball, you're coming with me, no tears. And he did, and they left. And they went up to the basketball courts together. And at age 7, he started dribbling. Right hand, left hand, backward, forward. Coach just had him drill. Didn't shoot, no shooting. But Coach believed in technique. You got to feel, you got to be with the ball, be part of your body. I mean, I didn't understand any of this stuff, but Benji sure did because he lit up like a light bulb. And then the coach put a blindfold on this little 7-year-old, and he started dribbling the ball between his legs. This was after they had worked together for like 4 or 5 weeks every day. Benji even came to me and said, please, can you excuse me from hockey and football and soccer and baseball? All I want to do is be with Coach Jay. And for 4 or 5 hours a day, the two of them would work together. Well, every night I do my rounds and I tuck the kids into bed. So that particular night, I went to the youngest bunk first, which was Benji's. And I looked at his bed, and there at the end of his bed was a massive bulge. I said, what is going on here? I mean, something doesn't seem like right. I said, Benji, what do you got underneath there? And sure enough, I couldn't believe it. But Benji had a squirmy old basketball tucked under it was filthy. But Benji loved his basketball and he slept with it every night. Well, Benji came and the hours kept piling up. So the following summer at age 8, frustration but dedicated, hour after hour, the two of them worked together. Coach even got off at 5 o'clock, but he said, I don't care about time off. I'm coming back after dinner, and then I'll give Benji a rest. And then Benji and I are going to come back later on. 8 years old. And Benji pleaded, come on, Coach, lower the rims to 8 feet. Coach said, nope, doesn't make any difference because all we're going to work, they're going to stay at their regular level of 10 feet because all I want you to do is work on technique, and technique. Well, at age 9, during the winter, his mother called me and said, every Saturday, Benji sits on the front doorstep waiting for the mailman to come. I said, the mailman? What does he do that for? He says, because every Saturday, Coach Jay sends him a package. And in the package, there's diagrams of zone defenses, 2-on-1s, how to do a low post, how to do a high post, how to do a triangle. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. But as far as Benji, this was better than a candy bar. So at age 10, he comes back to camp and he pleads with Coach Jay, teach me how to shoot, please, on the 10-foot rims. And Coach says, well, maybe you're getting big enough. And they start doing foul shots. but not from 10 feet, from 6 feet, real short, but proper form. Hands over the head, release, right motion, put a nice spin on the ball. And he couldn't move from 6 feet away to 8 feet away until he made 90 of 100. And he got to 8 feet. And again, he kept practicing and practicing. And coach had to say to Benji, because Benji says, Coach, I want to play in a competitive game. Coach said, not yet. You're not ready yet. Well, at age 11, he comes back. At this time, Benji is like salivating, bating breath. Coach, let me play in a league. I am ready. The coach says, okay, I'll do it, but there's one thing that you need to know. Benji says, Coach, you know me. I'll do anything you say. So the coach says to him, Coach J, you're not allowed to shoot. Not shoot? I can't shoot a basket? He says, no, but if you get fouled, you can take a free throw, but you can only dribble. Well, that league was a riot. 2-3 defensive players played played against Benji, and Benji was able to feed his teammates bounce passes between the legs, lobs. He led the league in assists, and incidentally, he led the league in the most free throws made. He made 75% at age 11, which was astonishing. At age 12, the campus had what we call around the world three-peat shooting contest, just like they have in the NBA. Well, 150 people entered from ages 7 through 15, and the counselor staff, even the basketball staff, and they got down from 150 to 3 people left in the competition. And who was one of the 3? But Benji. People couldn't believe that a 12-year-old was out there. Well, so he lost. He came in third, but he became like, people were cheering and screaming, Benji, Benji, Benji. And then the coach, Jay, had to decide which team should Benji play on, because we play by age divisions. So there's a 13-year-old team and a 12, 13, 14, 15. The 15-year-old team, some of those guys are 6'1", 6'2". One of them's even 6'3.5". Big guys. And they were told that a 12-year-old was going to play with them. And they were not happy at all. So there was a scrum under the basket, and they purposely let Benji get in first. And they literally started kicking at Benji. And they were so mean, it was horrible. And Benji, they finally scattered, and they saw Coach what they did. And Benji was crying and crying, and Coach turns to him, hey, you want to be an athlete? You're not getting any sympathy from me. Play hard. Well, that summer, Benji ended up being the point guard of the basketball team, starting point guard, no less. And the 15-year-olds accepted him because he was remarkable, because at the end of the season, we had a huge tournament with 8 camps coming. Well, every night, extra, under the lights, Benji and Coach Jay would be up practicing. So 8 teams were coming, and the day before the tournament, Coach Jay was also the tournament referee, as well as Benji's coach. So the 8 teams, one of them, the day before, one of the boys got pink eye, and out of courtesy to everyone said, our team isn't going to come, which left a spot, a vacancy in the draw. And all the other coaches says, Coach, can't you fill it? And Coach says, I'll try. So Coach goes through the bunks, and he says to the other boys who weren't even on the team, I needed some volunteers. And everyone knew they were going to get pounded. They were going to lose big time. Well, he did recruit a team on the following promise was, I will be your coach. But he had to tell Benji. It was a moonlit night, and the two of them, you could see his arm around his shoulders, and Benji hearing the news after all those years for the big tournament, Coach Jay was not going to be his coach. Well, the next day, the semifinals, it was round robins in the morning and semifinals and finals in the afternoon. The B team got pounded, but they got pounded smiling because they worked for Coach J. And then something really, really interesting happened. At lunch, the A team came to see me and said, including their coach, said, we have signed a petition. I said, what's the petition for? They said, we want Coach J this afternoon because the Beechwood Bears are an incredible team. We're going to meet them in the finals. And they got a guy named Stretch. And Stretch is probably 15 and he's already been recruited by Duke. He was like an amazing ball player. We got to have our coach. And I turned to Coach J and I said, Coach J, it's fine with me. The team wants it, the assistant. Well, Coach J, a man of dignity and respect, and he follows the rules, turns and says, once you start a tournament, you can't change. And Benji was devastated. Well, it turns out the Beechwood Bears ended up playing us in the finals. And the finals was an incredible game. It started raining, so we had to move it to an indoor court. And surrounding the court were almost 200 people, and people were banging on drums and yelling. But I'm telling you, this stretch was amazing. They had us down by 7 at the half. Comes down to the end of the game. We're down by 6. Benji steals the ball, hits a bucket. They bring it up, full court press. Benji anticipates the pass, scores again, down by 2. They foul Stretch because he's not a good foul shooter. He misses. Benji, at this point, grabs the rebound, 7 seconds left to go. He comes running up. 2 or 3 people from the Beechwood Bears are surrounding him, guarding him, hawking him, and he sees his friend, Alex. Alex is tall and gangly and no self-confidence, but he gives him a solid bounce pass just as the buzzer, and Alex takes a shot, but it was only like a layup. He makes it, and he turns the game into overtime. Well, at that point, Coach J is sitting in the stands, and what ended up happening in the overtime was Stretch, he did his thing. We were down at that point by a bunch of points, maybe 5 or 6. Benji worked his magic, and we got down by 2. They had the ball, 7 seconds left to go. Benji steals the ball and immediately goes, timeout, timeout. There's 2.7 seconds left to go. And in the huddle, Benji draws up a play. And the play's the following. He tells the person throwing it in, you're to throw the ball at the top of the arc of the circle. And then he tells his 3 other players, you're going to form a human barricade. And I'm going to start under the basket. And I'm going to wiggle and bob and weave. And then I'm going to run behind the human screen. And when you see me starting to run behind the human screen, he says to the person throwing it inbound, just chuck me the ball. And that's what happens. He throws him the ball. The crowd is going crazy. And sure enough, boom, he gets it, heaves it, gun goes off, you hear, woo! And the ball swishes through for a 3-pointer. And we win the game, and everybody is delirious. They're yelling, Benji, Benji, Benji. And they want to put him on his shoulders, and Benji says, nope, just give me the ball. And everybody says, what are you doing, Benji? And Benji walks up into the stands, and there's Coach. And he says, Coach, if there's anyone in this world who deserves this ball, it's you. And he gives the game ball in honor of Coach J. And their friendship was just like amazing. So, I think there's a lot to learn. I mean, I've never met a more distinguished man than Coach J. He was more than a basketball coach. He shaped lives. He was a teacher. He was a molder of young men. A player became a player, and he taught them, you're never going to be good without hard work, without dedication. without endless hours of trying. And what ended up happening to Benji? Benji didn't play Division I, but he played Division II, and he was a point guard, and he made All-American. And Coach Jay continued on, and he had great success. His team actually ended up winning the Indiana High School Championships. And the two of them still to this, for years after, they maintained a friendship that was so tight. And it was based on a whole lot more than basketball. It was based on mutual respect. It was based on caring. It was based on two people who devoted their lives to one another, gave of themselves. And so I learned so much from this story. It was amazing about what real friendship is about. So next week, guys, I hope there's better days on the horizon. I hope everybody stays well. I'll see you next Tuesday. Good night, everybody. Be safe and enjoy.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Bart.
Thanks, Bart.
Bye. Thank you.